I spent 5 days cruising around North Dakota checking out some ghost towns and abandoned places. And in this video, I'm going to show you what I saw. There's going to be a lot of amazing churches in this trip, including Saint Olaf Church and Hurricane Lake. We're also going to see some grain elevators, schools, and much more. So let's begin. Our first stop is Alkabo, North Dakota. Just one family lives here now. The most famous building in this town is this school. It's been completely restored, and I believe it's on the historical register list as well. This town is located about 6 miles from Montana, or about 9 miles to Saskatchewan. That's where I live. Not much has changed here since I first visited 10 years ago. This building has now collapsed. This building looks like it used to be the diner. It won't be much longer before this building completely collapses. I'm not really sure what this is. Maybe someone can tell me in the comment section below. Just north of town is the Fortuna Air Force Station. It's also located 4 miles west of the town of Fortuna. This tower went up in 1952 and closed in 1979. Nothing remains here except for the tower, and this is as close as you can get to it. The entire place is marked no trespassing. Our next town is Ambrose, North Dakota. This was founded in 1906. And it does look like it still has rail service. This place had as many as 300 residents. Now it looks like only 17 remain. Right along Main Street, you're going to see a whole bunch of buildings that have been boarded up for decades. This large building probably had the grocery store, hardware store, and maybe even a furniture store. Either that or it was a car dealership. And maybe it sold tractors. Walking through this town was really calm and peaceful. And there's still a few residential buildings that have been abandoned for a long time as well, including this one that was really large. It looks like it was 3 stories. Maybe it was the hospital or a residence, I'm not entirely sure. And right beside it is a much smaller house. Our next town is Charbonneau, North Dakota. My dad used to work in the oil field based out of Sidney, Montana, and we'd go cruising to places like Tioga and Williston. It is very possible I visited this town in the 80s. It's very close to the Montana border. The post office closed over 60 years ago and there's no more train service. This building was the school. And it looks like that used to be a house back there. There are not any more residents who live here. Next town is Temple, North Dakota. And once again, this was a town I very well could have visited back in the 80s. Most of the buildings have been removed or burnt down in the last 10 to 15 years, including the amazing church that used to be here. The town is also on the BNSF main line. You can still see a couple buildings behind that fence. And here's the last three residents. Saint Olaf Church is one of the most fascinating churches I've ever come across. It's not going to last much longer. As you can see, it's already tipping over. It's located north of Tioga on 75th Street by 108th Avenue Northwest. While I was here, I met a couple from Kansas. Ironically enough, they were coming up to visit Saskatchewan, where I live. If you don't mind telling me in the comment section below, I'd love to know where you are watching from. And have you ever visited any of these places? It's hard to believe this church is still standing. It really looks surreal. I hope you get a chance to see it before it collapses. Our next stop is Hamlet, North Dakota. This town has a really neat abandoned old school. It is marked no trespassing, so I can't go inside, and I couldn't find anyone to ask. Like a lot of small towns in North Dakota, once highways improved, rail lines started closing down, and farming became more efficient, a lot of residences would move to larger centers where there is more modern amenities and services. The population of a lot of these towns actually peaked somewhere between 1920 and World War II. Our next stop is Flaxton, North Dakota. This is not a ghost town, but it has this really amazing Farmers Co-op service station. The town was founded in 1900, and there's plenty of residences here. In fact, it's the kind of small town that would be nice to move to. And behind the old service station is this old car. I'm not sure how long it's been sitting here. And here's another service station. This is a monument to the old high school. Oh, and here comes a train. I thought this was a BNSF main line, but it's actually the Canadian Pacific Rail line. That was probably a diner. And that's the old school bell. And what an eerie basketball court. This is labeled the City Warehouse. Our next town is Tagus, North Dakota. It's just a one-road town. It was founded in 1900, and at one point it had a population of 140 people during World War II. The train still passes through town, but it doesn't make any stops. There's only about 5 or 6 buildings in town to check out. And the cemetery didn't have that many graves in it. Our next stop is Lonetree, North Dakota. It's only on here because it's got a really fascinating church in town. It is marked no trespassing, so I'm just going to shoot it from the road. Lonetree is only located about 15 to 20 minutes away from Minot, North Dakota. Antler, North Dakota is located really close to the Manitoba border. And the most famous building is this former customs house. It looks like they're in the process of restoring it and raising funds for it. That would be a great building to restore. It once had 342 residents. The Great Northern Rail Line came here, but now it's gone. And right along the main square is where you're going to see most of the buildings. Most of these places are marked no trespassing. What's really interesting is a lot of these building owners don't mind photographers coming up and taking pictures. They want everyone to have a fun, enjoyable experience. But there are some people who like to break into buildings or ignore those signs. And this building right here is one of them. There's a sign on the door talking about how it's recently broken into. To make sure we all have a fun experience taking photos of these kind of places, I like to respect landowners' boundaries and wishes. And here's a surprise, a standard gas station. I don't think I've seen many of these that are still in use. By the way, my grandma was born about 30 miles north of here in Manitoba. Our next town is Omenee, North Dakota. I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. There was no one around to ask how to pronounce it properly. It was founded in 1887. And according to Wikipedia, it had one of the best brass bands in the state with 22 members. It's hard to believe that this place had a population of 650 people in 1906. Now nobody lives here, but you can make out where all the sidewalks and streets were. By 1970, there was only 5 people left. In town, there was only about 2 or 3 buildings that you could photograph from the road. A lot of it was marked no trespassing. There's an outhouse. And there's a nice fence. It's not often you come across a complete ghost town that had that many residents at one time, and now there's nobody left. Some nice person has built a whole bunch of these birdhouses all over the place. That was really nice of them. Our next stop is Bantry, North Dakota. This place was founded in 1905. At its peak in 1920, this town had a population of 315. There's still numerous residents who live here. But at the main intersection in town, you're going to come across a few abandoned buildings, including what looks like to be the old bar. I'm not sure what this building used to be. And here on the corner looks like it used to be the main convenience store and probably the service station. I really like this town. It's got a lot of trees. It felt very peaceful. In fact, that's one common theme when I was in North Dakota. I was surprised by how many pretty towns there are. I kind of assumed North Dakota would be flat like Saskatchewan. That looks like it says Bond on the top of that building. Now that's an old sign. Our next town is Nanson, North Dakota. This was established in 1905. It had a post office until 1902. Even though nobody lives here, at one point 125 people lived here. There's just one road going through town with a couple of houses left over, both of which are marked as no trespassing. It seems like it would still be a nice place to live. Our next stop is Hurricane Lake Church. This was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to come to North Dakota. I tried coming here 9 years ago, but there was an unexpected snowstorm. The church was established around 1910, and there was a post office here once, but it never had rail service. As you can see, this church is in really bad shape. There was no way I was going to go inside this place. But I decided I was going to hook up my drone and see if I can drive my drone through the church. Don't tell my wife I did this. She'd get very mad. I couldn't find any information on when the last service was here, but I would estimate it had to have been at least 50 years ago. Now let's see if I get my drone out. There's me. Our next town is Brocket, North Dakota. I mostly just came here because of the gas station. The town was established in 1901. But I love old gas pumps, and this one's got a great one. And right across from the gas station looks like to be the old bar. Our next town is Sherbrooke, North Dakota. It was established in 1881 by Francophone settlers. What I was surprised to find out was that President William McKinley stayed here in 1896. It's been over 30 years since someone's lived here, and there's just a couple houses left. There was a cemetery about a mile away from here as well. There's a no trespassing sign. Our next town is Hamberg, North Dakota. I really enjoyed this place. Main Street has most of the abandoned buildings. Some of which may still be in use for storage. And it's got an amazing church. At its peak population, it had 200 people in 1930. And it's another one of those eerie basketball courts. I really hope you get a chance to explore North Dakota. It really is a gem, much more exciting than I thought. The only weird thing about North Dakota is that motel and hotel prices are higher than the national average. That's probably a result of all the oil field activity in the state. I wonder if this was the jail. And along the highway on the edge of town, there's a couple of abandoned homes. Looks like this may have been a service station before. Just a few miles directly west of Hamberg is a one-room school. According to the sign, it was built in 1901, closed in 1952, and then they restored it in 2003. Whoops, sorry, it was built in 1902 and closed in 1953. And just a few more miles west from the school is another church. I couldn't find any information about this church at all. Probably hasn't been used in about 30 to 40 years. And it was built in 1915. And my favorite ghost town in the whole state, Omenee, North Dakota. It was founded in 1906. And its peak population was 150 people in 1920. It had a general store, grain elevators, and all of the amenities you could possibly want for a small town. The Great Depression really hit this area hard, so it ended up being only 35 people by 1935. No trespassing on that side, and no trespassing on that side of the fence. The school closed in 1961, and by 1996, the post office closed. Although you can still walk down the road, everything else is marked as no trespassing. I can't imagine this church is going to last much longer. It looks like it froze and then de-thawed. A very interesting look. It took me about an hour to get here from Minot. It's not that far away. And they still have a couple of grain elevators. These ones are so old, they don't even have the metal tin on them yet. And just down the road from Omenee is the town of Regan, North Dakota. For some reason, the stone building in town seems like they're trying to save it. It's in really bad shape. If anybody knows what the building was or why they're trying to save it, please leave it in the comment section below. And here's the Stonewall building. It looks like it used to be a bar. But now it's used for a geocache. The town also has a grain elevator like most towns do in North Dakota. And here's the old pokey. I love when a town saves the old jailhouse. I can't imagine having to spend a weekend in here. And I wonder if back in those days, one of your friends just come to the window and talk to you. Our next town is Crystal Springs, North Dakota. It's right along the interstate, and there's pretty much just two buildings here to check out, but they're both great. This is one of the coolest looking abandoned schools in the entire state. It's all made of brick, and it is marked as no trespassing, so I'm not even going to try to go inside. It does look like the roof has collapsed anyway, so it's probably not very safe. And right across the road is this old church. There's still a lot of residents in town, but way over by those trees in the background. Our next stop is this town. I have no idea how to pronounce it and I won't even try. It was established in 1880 and the post office closed in 1943. The rail left the area in the 80s. All that's left is this amazing church and it's not going to last much longer. I'd really love to be able to photograph this one at night. I don't think I'm going to get the chance. It looks like it's one more winter storm away from completely collapsing in. Next is Merricourt, North Dakota. Established around 1883. The growth was tied to the railroad with a peak population of 153 in the 1940s. But then the post office closed in 1990. This looks like it used to be a hall or a theater. And across the road is the collapsed bank building. The buildings I find the most unique about this town are these two grain elevators. The one on the right in particular. I don't think I've seen this design anywhere else. It is very unique. And it does look like the train still comes to this town. Our next stop is Burt, North Dakota. At its peak, this town had 200 residents. Not very many of them remain at all. The post office closed around 1975. And the town still has a pair of grain elevators, but no rail service. And this again was probably the old bar and maybe hotel. And there's still a couple of abandoned residences left in town. Our next spot is Immanuel Norwegian Lutheran Church. This is a magnificent building. This place you gotta come and see. I'll put the GPS coordinates in the description below. The only thing I could find online was that burials in the cemetery ranged from 1920 until 1969. It's in the very extreme south part of North Dakota, not that far away from the South Dakota border. I hope you're enjoying this video. Thank you for watching. And now there's North Grand Church. We are now literally about 1 mile away from South Dakota. The only thing I could find about this church is that it was used until the 60s. You are now in a very remote part of the state when you get here. And it wasn't that far away from the Lutheran church we just visited a few minutes ago. The reason why the video is grainy is because I'm shooting here after the sunset. And now we're going to head to the Badlands. I wasn't going to put this town in the video because it's not really a ghost town. Marmath, North Dakota. It's just in a really pretty area of the state, and it does have some abandoned buildings. I didn't realize that North Dakota had real badlands. This used to be a service station. This town was founded as a railroad town along the Milwaukee Road. Obviously, Milwaukee Road's long gone, and it looks like BNSF has taken over the rail line here. The town at one point had over 1,300 residents. Only 101 remain now. Theodore Roosevelt was a frequent visitor here. I can see why. This whole area is gorgeous. And this grand building was an auditorium and a bank on the left. I was going to try to find pictures of this place from its heyday. And this theater is on the National Register of Historic Places since 1977. And look at that, another pokey. I don't think this is the original location. I can't imagine they'd leave prisoners out here all night, especially in the winter. And that's an advertisement for Lee jeans. They were really popular with unions. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour.